The sound of sirens shattered the silence inside ADX Florence. Guards sprinted down the corridors, their radios screaming with panic. On one of the security screens, a figure appeared in the outdoor exercise yard, a place where no prisoner was scheduled to be. The shadow moved calmly, pacing like a man who had all the time in the world. For the most secure Supermax prison in America, the so-called Alcatraz of the Rockies, this was impossible. ADX was built to make sure no one could escape, no one could move unnoticed. Yet here it was, a figure standing in the yard, caught on camera. When the guards stormed the yard with spotlights, their boots pounding against concrete, they found it empty. Nothing. No inmate. No intruder. Just silence. But the replay on the monitors showed the figure still there. And that left one question burning through the walls of ADX Florence. If no one could escape, then who or what had they just seen? To understand why this moment shook the prison so deeply, you have to know who was locked inside. ADX. Florence wasn't an ordinary prison. It was built for the most infamous criminals of modern times, terrorists, cartel leaders, and killers whose names filled headlines across the world. Men who had spread fear far beyond their prison walls, and who could never be trusted to live among other inmates again. One of those names was Joaquín El Chapo Guzmán, the Mexican cartel boss. Known for his daring escapes through tunnels and his billion-dollar drug empire, he had embarrassed governments with his ability to disappear whenever he chose. Twice he slipped out of prisons in Mexico, vanishing into underground passages designed just for him. But in 2019, after being convicted in the U.S., he was sent to ADX Florence. In another cell sat Ted Kaczynski, the infamous Unabomber. For nearly 20 years, he had terrorized the country with mail bombs, targeting universities, airlines, and anyone he saw as symbols of technological destruction. His manifesto had been published in national newspapers, his ideas debated across America. Now, at ADX, his world had shrunk to a concrete box and the sound of his own breathing. Zacarias Moussaoui was also there, forever known as the 20th hijacker of the 9/11 attacks. His trial exposed chilling details about the plot, linking him to one of the darkest days in U.S. history. His anger never faded. Even inside ADX, he shouted about conspiracies, refusing to be silenced. For many, his presence in the prison was a reminder of how much hatred still lingered behind those walls. Then there was Richard Reid, the shoe bomber. In 2001, he boarded a plane with explosives hidden in his shoes, planning to blow it up mid-air. Passengers and crew stopped him just in time, saving hundreds of lives. At ADX, his attempt became part of the reason why the prison demanded absolute control. A man who once tried to turn an ordinary flight into a disaster now sat alone in silence. Watched. These men weren't chosen at random. Each inmate inside ADX had been placed there because they were too dangerous for ordinary prisons. They had either inspired fear across the world, orchestrated violence from behind bars, or proved impossible to contain anywhere else. ADX was built to cut off all reach, to break the connection between inmate and influence. Here, even a whisper had no place to travel. Life inside was crushing. Inmates spent 23 hours a day inside a concrete cell. Meals arrived through a slot in the door. Exercise meant standing alone in a small outdoor cage, staring at the sky through mesh wire. Visits, when they came, were through thick glass, voices filtered by phones. The prison wasn't just a building, it was a machine designed to erase hope. And yet, even in a place built to erase possibility, cracks sometimes showed. Guards patrolled with extra caution near the cells of men like El Chapo, Moussaoui, and Reid. They knew the history, they knew the influence, and deep down, they feared what could happen if even one part of the system failed. That's why the figure in the exercise yard that night terrified them so. As the alarms faded and the guards returned to their posts, silence returned to the prison. But the whispers did not stop. Inmates banged on their doors, laughing, taunting, spreading rumors through the vents. Some said it was El Chapo testing the system. Others claimed Moussaoui had found a way to bend the rules. And a few whispered something darker, that ADX, the strongest prison in America. The laughter echoed long after the alarm stopped. It was faint, but chilling, traveling down the concrete halls as if the walls themselves were speaking. Guards froze, scanning every corridor with flashlights. Radios hissed with questions no one could answer. Every inmate was locked in their cell, and yet the sound continued, drifting through the air like a taunt. For the most secure prison in America, in the cells, Inmates pressed closer to their doors. El Chapo smirked, listening, as though he understood something the guards didn't. Ted Kaczynski scribbled faster in his notebook, the pencil scratching furiously in the silence between echoes. Zacarias Moussaoui shouted through the slot in his door, claiming this was proof the prison was weak, that America's fortress was nothing but concrete. The warden arrived in the control room, his jaw tight as he demanded answers. Guards replayed the surveillance feeds from the night. The figure in the yard appeared again, pacing calmly under the floodlights. Then, without warning, it vanished. Frame by frame, one moment it was there, the next it was gone. The warden slammed his fist on the console. Glitch or not, this doesn't. Security tightened. Guards doubled at every checkpoint, rifles ready, eyes sharp. Every inmate was strip-searched, every cell torn apart for hidden objects or contraband. Pages of Kaczynski's notes were seized, though they seemed like rambling formulas and coded phrases. El Chapo's books and letters were examined for secret messages. Even Moussaoui's prayer. Days passed, but the memory of the figure and the laughter remained. Guards walked faster, their eyes darting more often to the shadows. Inmates whispered through vents, trading rumors like currency. Some claimed El Chapo was already planning a new escape. Others swore Kaczynski had found a way to manipulate the system. And a few suggested the laughter came not from a prisoner, but from the prison itself. Then came the second shock. In the middle of a routine check, one of the guards reported a cell door that didn't lock properly. It belonged to a high-risk inmate, not El Chapo, not Moussaoui, but another man serving life for violent crimes. The malfunction was quickly fixed, but the discovery sent panic through the ranks. ADX was supposed to be flawless. Now there were two incidents. The news reached the inmates quickly. A door that didn't close? In ADX, that was the kind of story that spread like fire. Some shouted encouragement through their vents, others banged their fists against steel. Hope, dangerous, intoxicating hope, was alive in their voices. For men with nothing left but time, even the smallest weakness was a reason to believe. The warden ordered an immediate lockdown. Lights stayed on for 24 hours. Meals were delayed. Guards patrolled in silence, their boots echoing against the concrete. Every corner of the prison was searched, every door tested twice. ADX was a machine, and the warden was determined to prove it still worked. But behind his anger was fear. The inmates weren't the only ones losing faith in the. That night, silence returned, heavy and suffocating. Inmates lay on their bunks, staring at the cracks in the walls, at the thin slices of sky through their windows. Guards patrolled the halls, rifles heavy in their hands. And then, just after midnight, the cameras caught it again. The figure was back. This time, it wasn't in the yard. It was in the corridor out. When the guards arrived, the corridor was empty, no doors open, no inmates out of place. And yet, the cameras showed the figure still walking, pausing at each door as if taking attendance. El Chapo smiled wider than before. Moussaoui shouted louder. Kaczynski scribbled faster. Reid closed his eyes and whispered into the darkness. For the first time in its history, the guards stood in the corridor, their flashlights sweeping over bare concrete, but they saw nothing. On the monitors, though, the figure remained, calm, patient, almost mocking. It paused longest outside El Chapo's cell, turning slightly as if acknowledging him. The cartel leader leaned forward on his bunk, a smirk flickering across his face. To the guards, the cameras were The warden called for a full systems check. Technicians from outside were rushed into ADX Florence, their laptops hooked up to the security network. They combed through every frame, every camera feed, every wire connection. No errors were found. The system was flawless on paper. There is no malfunction, one technician finally admitted. What you're seeing shouldn't be possible. Inside their cells, the men reacted in different ways. Moussaoui shouted victory, pounding the steel door with his fists until his knuckles bled. Richard Reid knelt on his bunk, whispering that destiny had come to free him. Kaczynski wrote faster, page after page of numbers, symbols, and words, as though decoding the figure's movements into a new formula. El Chapo said nothing, but for the guards, exhaustion grew. Many hadn't slept in days, their eyes sunken, their nerves on edge. Simple routines became harder, delivering food trays, escorting inmates to showers, patrolling the empty halls. Every sound seemed suspicious, every shadow alive. ADX Florence, once known for its absolute control, was now eating away at the very men sworn to protect it. Rumors even reached the staff break rooms. Some guards swore the figure wasn't a man at all, that it was the echo of those who had died at ADX. Others whispered that one of the inmates had found a way to hack the system, bending technology to create illusions. Still others said it was simpler than that. A test. Someone, somewhere, was probing ADX Florence, and the prison wasn't as invincible. The warden ordered silence among the staff. No one was to speak of the figure outside the prison walls. Official reports described the incidents as minor technical issues. But secrecy only made the whispers stronger. Guards exchanged nervous looks in the control room. Inmates kept pressing their faces to the slots in their doors, calling out to each other in hushed tones. It was as if Then, late one night, the figure returned once more. But this time it didn't pace or vanish. On the cameras, it stopped in the middle of the corridor and turned toward the lens. For the first time, the guards could see its face, or what should have been a face. The image was blurred, almost smeared, features unrecognizable. The figure raised one hand slowly, and then the feed cut to black. The screen's ADX Florence was built to be the end of the line, a fortress where the most dangerous men in the world, terrorists, cartel leaders, and killers, could never again spread fear. For decades, it stood as a symbol of control, a place where hope was stripped away 1 hour at a time. But in recent nights, something changed. A shadow in the yard, a cell door that didn't seal. Stay tuned for the next part, where we uncover more of the deadly secrets, infamous inmates, and chilling realities inside America's most secure Supermax prison. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter.